each, and we'll be covering the topics. We'll have the first speaker, Dr. Sachin Rai, who's the additional professor at PGI Chandigarh, and he'll be talking on how should one become a reviewer and what do editors expect. So a very relevant topic in the current scenario when all of us are looking at having some publications. So what it takes to become a reviewer, he'll be guiding us on that, and what do the editors expect when you submit a manuscript to them. Later on during this session, we have Dr. Ankita Chugh, who's additional professor at AIIMS Jodhpur, and she'll be having a talk on how do editors look at your paper. So we'll have Dr. Sachin Rai take his talk first. There's a very humble request to all of you to please mute yourselves because it interrupts the flow of the speaker. So I just request everyone to please mute yourself. That'll be very nice. Thank you. Over to Dr. Sachin Rai, please.
Thank you, Ashi. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashi. A very good evening to all of you. On behalf of the organizing committee, I welcome you to the day 2 of this reviewers workshop. Respected teachers, I can see that on the video, Dr. Tripathi, sir. Good evening, sir, ma'am, and Dr. Pandit, sir. So the presentation would be dealing with, this would take around more than 20 minutes or so. And we will be dealing with two aspects here: how to become a reviewer and what do the editors expect when they send you an invite for the review. One should understand that the editor's main role is to publish good articles. It is not his or her role to reject or suggest modifications in the bulk of the articles. There is where the role of the reviewer comes in, and hence it's a role of the reviewer that he or she should screen the articles and send the good ones, the modified ones, to the editor for further evaluation. A good article always increases the impact factor of the journal, increases the reputation of the journal, and that's the editor's first job. I've been reviewing papers for the last 17 years, and I'm presently the associate editor of Journal of Maxillofacial and Oral Surgery, which is our association's journal. And I'm stuck somewhere in between the editor and the reviewer, so I know my job pretty well here, actually. So yeah, the slides ahead would raise the particular points, how to become a reviewer. This is the minor portion of my presentation. The major portion would cover the editor's expectations in context of response to invitation when you get one, response to conflict of interest, reporting unethical or issues or malpractices, the first read and the second read, and finally, when you put your mental thoughts into words and submit your reviews. What does the editor expect from you on these particular points? And also in between, a prior self-assessment before you go in the job of reviewing a paper or take it up as a full-time job. So how to become a reviewer? The most logical and the rational way to go about it is publish your own paper, publish your own research, publish your own scientific work. That will build up your own reputation in your fraternity. Editor would somehow already come to know about it, and it will be easy for you to put up your case as a potential reviewer. Another way to go ahead with this is approach your mentor or teacher. Many of the teachers, our mentors, are already in the editorial board or the editors themselves, or they know the editor in good reputed journals. If you are showing your willingness to do the job of a reviewer, they can always recommend your name depending on your own potential. You can also do mock reviews, review a paper and show it to them so that they can improve upon it. There are other avenues of peer reviewing where you can try your hand. By PubMed, there is a post-publication peer review system where you can review already published articles, and then you can interact with the author and honestly interact with on a one-to-one basis. And then there is the option of applying through the journal website. There is always a tab on the first login page, join in as a reviewer or become a reviewer. You can go through that. Be proactive in contacting journal editors. meet them in scientific conferences, meetings, approach them, tell them their willingness to be a reviewer, show them your CV, mail it to them, your area of interest, your previous research done, again, your list of publications, and currently, whatever research you have undertaken or the projects you are already conducting. This will help the editor to frame an area of interest and send you a particular manuscript when he knows that you are working in this particular field, like a TM joint surgery field or an oral implantology or some other field of medicine or dentistry. Before taking up the first job as a reviewer, there's a sort of prior self-assessment everybody should do, right? There's old Latin proverb which goes as quis custodiet ipsos custodes. Who will judge the judges? Who will guard the guards? Who will review your reviews which you have done for other people? Your editor reads your reviews. He critically evaluates your reviews. He then uh, takes you as a good editor or a bad good reviewer as a bad reviewer, and hence your future job with the uh, journal would be there. How much experience do you have, clinical or academic? How many research work dissertations have you guided, and how many projects have you conducted? Ask yourself. For example, if I'm reviewing a paper on TM joint surgeries, how many TM joint surgeries I have done myself, how many papers I do have on TM joint surgeries, how many presentations I have done in TM joint surgeries, and how many interaction I had on TM joint surgery. Then you start reviewing some others' work, right? Now, area of interest, does it match the journal's profile? An article comes to you from Oral Implantology Journal, but you don't do oral implants. Why should you take it up just because to have the feel of a reviewer? No, you should decline that politely. I'm not doing oral implants, or I don't have too much experience in oral implants that I can review somebody else's work. So excuse yourself from that. Conflict of interest, does it apply here? Yes or no? You may be knowing the center where the research has been done, maybe your own center, your colleague's center. Avoid a situation of conflict of interest. Decline politely to the editor that there's a conflict of interest, potential or apparent, and hence I won't be able to do that. And lastly, command on the scientific language. A lot of times we get manuscripts which are poor in their language, and then we have to either correct it or suggest suggestions in our own words. If our own language won't be appropriate or scientific, how would we be able to deliver the message which we are trying to do? And this is something which everybody can learn. All of us have come from the different backgrounds, and we can improve on our own scientific language the way we want the authors to read their reviews. Once you have conducted this prior self-assessment done on yourself, the first thing you should do is respond promptly to the first mail, to the invitation. Would you accept or decline? Don't keep sitting on the first mail by the editor. Avoid delays. Don't forget, at the end of it all, there's an author waiting for a positive comment from the editorial office. So don't delay, either accept or decline immediately within hours or a day or two, so that it goes to the other reviewer. Coming to the first read, outlining a decision. Before you start with the first read, the first thing which I would suggest to youngsters or the beginners in reviewing system, take a printout. Keep it on your desk with a pencil or pen in hand. If you try to read the manuscript on your mobile phone or desktop, the moment you switch it off, you'll forget about it. A printed document on your desk will keep reminding you of the job which is pending. Hence, take a printout. That's the first thing you should do. The first read should be done the very first day or within a day or two. It gives an initial impression of the paper and gives a sense of what eventual recommendation would be. What should you do in the first read? Flag potential major flaws. Give it a read through. The most important of all of it in today's era is ethical concerns, approvals for human or animal trials, whether they were followed or not, whether ethical board was taken into consideration or not. Another flaw could be length of reduction, whether vague or too lengthy methodology or discussion, whether headings and subheadings have been used appropriately, and the quality and the number of the pictures. Why? Because the authors, if I'm an author, for me, every picture is important. But every journal has constraints regarding publication, the number of pictures. Most of them have caps on the number of pictures. So it is our job to reduce the number of pictures and remove the less useful ones and put in the more important ones. That's the first read. Second read, uh, do it put a gap of few days, a day, 2 3 4 days before between the first and the second read. Before framing a decision, take a second, reread it thoroughly. It will make sure that any initial concerns are correct and fair, or otherwise incorrect or not fair. Maybe you were too judgmental initially, but when you read it thoroughly, you may have a different perspective. How to review a manuscript? I won't be covering that. There's another speaker after a couple of days who take up that issue in a very descriptive manner. Take a mental note of the positive aspects that can be communicated to the author. This could help in his or her future submissions. The details of the reviewing would be taken up by another speaker. So other duties which are expected from you by the editor, or rather other unpleasant duties which the editor expects from you, is communicating malpractice, fraud, or unethical issues immediately, suspected plagiarism. Most of the manuscripts have already been through the plagiarism software, and you can very well see how much percentage of copying is there. So it is, if it is beyond the normal acceptable percentage, you can always write to the editor immediately and send the manuscript back. Any fraud and attributed work, unethical procedures, duplicate publications, if you come to know about it, should be immediately informed to the editor. Bias or other conflicts of interest should also be reported. It's a duty of the reviewer to do all these things in the first read and within a few days of accepting the manuscript. Regarding the language of the manuscript, what does the editor expect from you? Not every submission is well written, but make sure that the text meaning is clear. A lot of times we get manuscripts where the language is poor. We all come from different backgrounds, from different part of the region, from different countries, and the language may vary. The correctness of language may vary. But if the language is poor, but the core message is delivered, suggest ways for improvement. Don't shun the article just because the language is poor. If a manuscript has many major flaws in the language, do not try to fix it. It's not your job. It's the editorial office or the publication's house job to correct the English literature and language. Sorry, pop-up. Mentioned it in the review. There are a lot of now softwares, Grammarly, the one I know, who can improve your syntax and grammatical errors thoroughly and suggest various modifications in your writing pattern. Lastly, in context of language, judge the content, not the language. Let the issue of the language taken care by the editorial office of the publication house, but do mention whatever you want to be corrected. Now, shaping a review in your mind, putting it in your mental note. Now, the first statement may sound like a cliche statement, but then again, it is quite true. Treat the author's work the way you would like your own work to be treated. We were all beginners at some point of time. Our publications have been rejected in one or the another journal. We know how it feels. Be polite, honest, and clear. At least this will help the author to improve in his future correspondences. Review should ultimately help the author improve their article. Be objective and constructive, not subjective, vague, and destructive. Don't discourage the author. Be constructive and objective. That is why point-wise, honest clarifications or doubts should be put across. Use easy language so that it can be understood by the people whose first language is not English. This is a very common scenario. We get a lot of papers from different neighboring countries where the first language is not English, and we have to take care of that. Number the points and refer to page and line numbers in the manuscript when making specific comments so that it is very clear to the author where exactly do you want corrections or modifications. Now, writing a review. What does the editor expect from you when you are writing a review finally before submitting it? You have to categorically put it in 2 points. You have to summarize the article, raise the major issues, the minor issues, confidential comments to the editor, then comments to the author, and finally your recommendation, acceptance, revision, or rejection. The first para should summarize the manuscript, summarize the paper, indicate whether the work is novel or mainly confirmatory, correlate the findings with the existing literature and current knowledge, give positive feedback first, indicate the work's strength, its quality, and completeness. This would summarize, this would be the first few lines or the first para of your comments. The major issues, as I told before, just check or write, has similar or contradictory work already been published without the authors acknowledging this? Now, this may show a bias. I may not cite articles which are going against my results. I may cite more articles which are corroborating with my results. If something like that comes across and if you can see that, that's a major flaw. You have to put it into words. You have to quote the articles which should be aptly quoted in the article. Is the evidence presented strong enough to prove the case? A good research should be reproducible in the same circumstances anywhere in the world, right? Not that it works only in a particular center. Is the evidence strong enough so that the research is reproducible? Is the study reproducible? If yes, then go ahead. If major revisions are required, try to indicate clearly what they are. Are there any ethical issues? If you are unsure, it may be better to disclose this in the confidential comment section to the editor himself or herself. The minor issues, any ambiguous or vague statements, how can this be corrected? You can suggest it. Are the correct references cited? If not, which should be cited instead? And also, as I said in the previous slide, are citations excessive? Just to raise one point, I am citing 2 or 3 articles. Is it necessary? Most of the journals have again cap for the number of references. If you feel that the references are excessive and delivering the same message, you can put it across to cut down the references, limited or biased. Are there any factual, numerical, or unit errors? If so, what are they? Are all tables and figures appropriate, sufficient, and correctly labeled? If not, say which are not. Now we get a lot of manuscripts where for a same set of values, the authors put a table and a graph also. Now both of them should not be there. Both of them are trying to put across a same message. Either put a table or put a graph. Don't put them together. The graph looks good for the author. He may find it important, but for us who have a limited space for the article, space crunch in the journal, we have to try to sort it out and cut the unnecessary things from the manuscript. Coming to the criticism and the confidential comments to the editor, what does he expect from you when you are writing him in the confidentiality of the manuscript? Highlight any malpractice. Now, this is again which quite important. Actually, this is coming again and again. Highlight any malpractice such as suspected plagiarism, fraud, unattributed work, unethical works, bias, or conflict of interest. This should be the first thing we should be put across if you find it. Secondly, be objective, precise, and critical when commenting on the manuscript. The editor should understand the evaluation straight away. That will help him or her to formulate the final decision. Don't beat around the bush. You can put across what exactly do you think of the manuscript, because it's a confidential statement. The author is not going to read it. So you can put it honestly to the editor. Now, the comment to the author, if you're accepting the manuscript, don't just give a don't give a short don't just give a short cursory remark such as great or accept. Reveal the potential contribution of the article to the journal specialty at large. I'll again repeat, there was some disturbance. Don't just give a short cursory remark such as great or accept. Reveal the potential contribution that the journal would give to the specialty at large. And how would it benefit to the readers of the journal, especially the young readers, young readers of the journal? A recommendation for major or minor revision is very common. That is the most common scenario in reviewing. State specific changes to be made, calling for rebuttal from the author for each point. Point-wise raise the issues and call for their justifications or rebuttal. And keep your options open. Be available for re-reviewing or revision of this manuscript. Because it is always good for you to re-review because you are the one who had raised the point. So it should be you who should be checking whether those points were taken care of or not. So you have to be open to re-reviewing if you are suggesting major or minor revisions. And lastly, if you're going to raise a problem, provide a solution in the way you can, be it language, scientific methodology, or writing pattern. Provide a solution the best way you can. The last slide, if you are offering rejection, that's what your decision is. Give constructive feedback for improvement. Again, keep the focus on the content and not on the author. Avoid making critical confidential comment to the editor while being polite and encouraging to the author. Now, this can be a situation, right? The editor would be confused, the author would be confused. You have put in positive comments and then you have suggested rejection. Don't do that. Your statement should be equally meaningful in both the columns, and that can also land the editor in a fix where a trigger for appeal can be put across. The author won't get a feedback on how to improve the manuscript, and it could get a trigger and appeal. So keep the constructive feedback point wise and focus to the manuscript in both the editorial comment and the author comment. So that ends my talk. The last slide is I would put up a statement. Your review is only as good as your wisdom. And wisdom comes from your failures, your rejections, your successes, your year of experiences. So try to have a positive outlook when you are reviewing somebody's other's work. You were there in the same shoes a few years back. You were doing the same thing, trying to put across your manuscripts, which you thought were too good to be too good for publications. Hence, be positive when you are reviewing somebody else's work. That is all for this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sachin. Lovely talk, crisp and nice. Any questions from Dr. Sachin? You can either type in the chat box. And there's a link to the. Yes, please. Dr. Taranjeet Kaur has a question. In the meantime, you can also click the link which is on the chat box posted up, which needs to be filled. So the question, Dr. Sachin, is how can reviewers take care of their own bias while reviewing?
Come again, sorry.
The question is, how can reviewers take care of their own bias? The intrinsic bias is what she's trying to
see. Most of the journals have structured way of putting your reviews across. You understand? There's a structured format to how to review your article, and a lot of couple of them have unstructured ones. So you have point wise, you have to critically put across your point regarding if you have a bias. Be honest to yourself if there's some overlaps, if there is some issue with the content or if you know the author or the unit, then stay away from reviewing.
True.
Maybe Divya ma'am can put in something on that front.
Divya ma'am, can we have you on, please?
Yeah. Hello, Taranjeet. So, reviewer bias. To remove the reviewer bias, reviewer has to be himself a bit aware of whether he or she is trying to do an actual ethical job, and that's why to remove reviewer bias, the editors have the paper sent to 2 or 3 people. So there's no just single reviewer who is going to do the review. That's one thing. And the other thing is, uh, when the article has got 2 rejects or 3 rejects, then obviously it is a rejection. But if there is one rejection and maybe one major revision, then again it would be something like the editor needs to decide with the third reviewer whether the article is to be accepted or to be sent for revision, or what is the mindset regarding the article for the third reviewer. So it has to be with the many reviewers, and the protocol which is followed in most of the journals is that it is blinded. So the reviewer doesn't know who the author is. So usually the traditional thing is it's single blinded, where the reviewer doesn't know. But some journals do have double blinded as well as triple blinded reviewing system as well. So it depends on journals how to remove this reviewer bias.
Divya, can I just ask one thing here? Reviewers can have a bias towards author or the procedure or the protocol, whether they are in favor of it or their own personal experience with it. So about the author, I understood, because we don't know, it's a blind procedure, so authors are not known. But we may have, in my experience, a certain treatment works. So I may already feel that it is something, so I may have a bias. So yeah, your answer helps in some ways, but I think absolute removal of bias is difficult.
That is the reason there are more reviewers than one in a single article.
Yeah,
so that is taking care of that individual's reviewer bias.
Yeah.
I think what Dr. Taranjeet is saying, that those are anecdotal evidences, like it probably works in your hands, but it may not work in someone else's hands. So that is like an anecdotal case report or something which may work only in your case. But the beauty of a peer review process is that it goes through a number of steps, and a number of people go through it before it is actually accepted. So they tend to eliminate that, they tend to screen or filter through that bias which might have originated from the personal point of view. So the first checklist is the guidelines of the journal, as Dr. Sachin said. And the second is the peer review process. Through the stringency of the process, through it tends to filter out any kind of bias. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Dr.
You're welcome, ma'am.
It does, yeah.
We have a question from Dr. Sridhar. What if there are difference of opinion from first reviewer to second reviewer? Is Dr. Sachin around
here? Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. What if there is a difference of opinion from the first reviewer of the second reviewer? So if there are 2 reviewers and they've got difference of opinion, what happens then?
So that's the job of the associate editor or the editor to take care of both the reviews, respect the reviews from both the reviewers, and find a middle path, or take his own judgment to the task and do it. It's a common situation. We come across these situations.
May I add something here? There's
Sure, ma'am.
like collaborative review as well. So when there are conflicting reports from the reviewers and the editor is in a state of dilemma whether to accept it or not, or what should be the fate of the article, he likes the article, but he doesn't know how to manage the things which are objectionable to the other reviewers. So there can be a common platform where he can invite all the reviewers, he can present case, and then he can ask their review points on a single platform, and then finally take a decision himself that what should be the final recommendation to reject or accept. So that is a collaborative review as well. Yeah.
Right now, thank you. We have another question from Dr. Karpa Gawali. The question is, how can we show the study is original and not a modification of a similar study? Is it the duty of the reviewer to find out the originality of the study?
Yeah. Can I answer that? Hello.
Request Dr. Sridhar to please mute your audio, please. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
What was the question? Can I?
Yeah. The question is, how can we be sure that the study is original and not a modification of a similar study? Is it the duty of the reviewer to find out the originality of the study?
No, there's no absolute method to get to know about the duplicity. But again, there are softwares, plagiarism softwares, which can see if the text has been copied largely or whatever the percentage is. First thing. Secondly, knowing your field of work, if you have come across a similar paper or a presentation, you can cross-check it through the various sites like PubMed, or else you can directly contact the previous authors.
Yeah. If I can add, usually
Yes, ma'am.
plagiarism is usually done when already most of the journals show the plagiarism content when the article is being sent to the reviewer. So that most of the times is available. But now the task of the reviewer is to check whether it has been published elsewhere by the same author, and if the same topic is published by another author, how different is it from the previous one? So I think that task should be taken up by the reviewer to cross check, and that's why the reviewers are given 6 months of time frame for online checking, and they are able to see all the cross check the article wherever similar type of articles have been published.
Every journal doesn't give 6 months to review. They are not every journal gives 6 months to reviewing, right?
Elsevier gives it for 6 months, but the other journals as well have some cross check on the same site to review the
Dr.
article.
Vivek, sorry, ma'am. Dr. Vivek, please mute yourself. Dr. Avula, please mute yourself. Thank you. I would request all participants to please mute as it obstructs the flow of the speakers. Please mute yourself, please. Thank you.
This is a flaw of the WebEx. We can't mute all of the participants, but we can only request you all to keep yourself muted. Thank you.
Ma'am, the next question is again from Dr. Taksh Agarwal. Reviewer usually does not have access to plagiarism software, so how does one check that aspect? Any suggestions? I think you've already answered that question, that the manuscript is sent to the reviewers after a plagiarism check. The next question.
And even the percentage is shown when you are sent the manuscript. Most of the manuscripts who have already attached plagiarism report.
Right. The next question is from Dr. Rahul Pandey. How can the bias of an editor be removed? Because mostly reviewers know who is the author. So that's for the editor-in-chief, Divya ma'am, to answer.
Yeah.
Editor's bias, how can it be removed? I think they still exist, but editor has to work on the basis of the reviewer's comments. So if the reviewers are saying reject, then editor can't, even if the editor is biased towards that person, if the reviewers are saying reject, editor cannot accept the article. That's one thing. But yes, if there is major revision or there is rejection, editor can always support to get more reviewers to find out how the article can be improved, and I think that way there exists some editor bias.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. We have two linked questions. Both of them are asking the same. Two participants are asking the same question, basically. Dr. Divya Sharma and Dr. Madan Mishra. Basically, they say that they receive some good articles with for reviewing, but the name of the unit or the college name is still within the article. I mean, they can see that name which is visible. Ideally, it should not be there, but they're saying should that be accepted or rejected to review?
Actually, all the authors are asked to send the manuscript without the college name, without the institutional name. And now I don't think there's any system who is going inside the article, checking whether it is somewhere mentioned in the article. It only is the reviewer who can bring it out that this is the problem here. They have displayed the name. So it should be sent back to the editor that it is not blinded. So that way only we can remove that issue. Otherwise, it's still there. Although the guide for authors says that the institute should be anonymous, but we have seen that some of the authors do write.
Yeah. So once it is blinded, it is sent to another reviewer, or it's sent to the same
No,
reviewer back.
we can't send it to the
It is
same
sent-
reviewer. It has to be sent to the
Someone else,
anonymous.
yeah. So I hope that answers Dr. Madan and Dr. Divya's question. Dr. Divya has another question, which is the last before we start with Dr. Ankita's session. I have found fake references in some of the articles. All references too need to be checked. So that's like more of a statement. She says that her experience says that she's found fake references. So obviously the references too need to be checked. So that's a good point.
References need to be checked because many times the author is doing self-citation. Sometimes the references are very old, so you have to check that the author includes latest references. It's not an old manuscript which has been sent for publication. So something what is latest has to be updated. So references have to be checked, and if you can check the authenticity of the references, that's fine. I don't think when it happens, the all the references are checked when they go into the production mode, and then the journal manager usually, if some link is not occurring to that reference, then the author is asked by the journal manager during the production phase that you have to either change the reference or you have to update the reference so that it is complete.
Right. We just have two more questions which have popped up. One, Dr. Diksha Singh would like to know, in case we have an access to plagiarism software, which one is recommended and the way to access it. So
I don't think the journal reviewers are given the password for the software. It's usually the institution which has it. Though, in my experience, iThenticate is the best one, which we have been using in our journal, and it comes to me with the journal with the article. So I get something. How much is the manuscript plagiarism? I get to see what is the author similarity index. So how many times the same author has submitted a similar type of article. So sometimes it happens that an author submitted once and then withdrawn or rejected, and again the author is submitting the same thing, and then it is visible on my screen that there is author similarity with the same manuscript.
But mostly, to answer Dr. Diksha Singh's question, is that the article will be sent to you after a plagiarism check has already been done.
Yes.
So you don't need to hunt around for a plagiarism software.
Yeah.
Most of the journals would already do a plag check and then send it to you. The next three set of questions are from Dr. Madhu Shankari, Dr. Nandini, and Dr. Taranjeet Kaur. I'll just sum it up. They all three want to ask whether it is important to check the authenticity of statistics as well, like the stats of an article. Do we need to go in depth and use the right statistical tools and analyze the data? I think the question also needs to know why some of us may not be very good at stats. I mean, the reason why we all took up biology was because we were not good at maths. So I think to answer her question, I think Divya ma'am or Sachin sir could probably answer it better. But I think that what they need to know, and probably even I would like to know that is, do we need to go in depth of the stats and to check it?
I think.
Ma'am, would you answer that?
Yeah, I'm answering. So if the stats is simpler and you can handle it, fine, you do it. If not, just mention that I have reviewed the article without the stats so that the editor can send the article to a statistician for further evaluation. So what you can handle yourself, you have to do that, and what is beyond your limits, just express that it needs to be checked through, it has to be evaluated by another statistician so that the editor can make that choice.
Right. I think that also answers Dr. Vivek's question. He just put in a similar question, so that answers. The last question before we start, Dr. Neeta Mishra, if it is a series of review, is a self-citation accepted or not?
Usually, salami publication is not a good idea. If you have to publish it as a whole. Do not break it into pieces. That's my comment onto it.
Right. Can you use a self citation? Like, can you quote yourself?
If it has to be, then yes. But
If it is significant, we should.
Okay. Right. So thank you very much. We now move on to the next part of today's session. It's by Dr. Ankita Chugh, and her topic is how do editors look at your paper? So it presents a viewpoint as to what the editor will probably look at when you submit your paper for publication. So she'll give that viewpoint. She's currently the additional professor at AIIMS Jodhpur. So I'll hand it over to Dr. Ankita, please.
Thank you so much, Ashi. Am I audible enough?
Yeah, we can hear you well. Thank you.
Okay. And thank you, Sachin sir. You have done half of my job. I will try that I don't repeat the things for the audience. There's a lot of discussion how to remove the editor bias or the peer review bias. I would quote an editor's statement. He said that peer review system has so much of flaws, but it is one of the systems that was much better than others. So the remaining biases, the remaining flaws of this editorial process, including the peer review, which is an extension of the editor itself, we, I think, need to accept. Okay, now coming to Sachin sir has beautifully presented what are the expectations of editors towards the reviewers. But if we see the peer review process, your paper first lands up into the editor's desk, and it is this checkpoint that you have to clear to reach to the peer review. At this checkpoint, it is the editor who decides whether he'll be sending it for peer review or he may reject it and send it back. So my presentation is basically a compilation of editors' perspectives, their thoughts, their recommendations about basic things and small points that we need to take care of, for which they seem are very important to get a publication done. So to know what is right, we ought to first know what our editors are thinking. See, the editors are the face of a journal. They have a moral and ethical obligation for good science towards the journal as well as the society. And they strongly believe that any research or any publication is useful only if it provides something new to the existing knowledge base. Because they see and they are much aware that there are thousands of publications which are hardly being read by few bunch of people. So this is absolutely a waste of money and resources. And we also know that the publishing is their business. So they have to select articles, but their only motive is they want to select the best ones. So now it is our duty to impress those editors. And what editors expect from an author is you should do a thorough, extensive literature review, and you should know what is the current evidence, what is already proven, and think beyond that, because there is no reward for reinventing a wheel. So you have to think beyond what is already been done. And for doing that, they recommend that you should think deep, you should think out of the box, and then only you can come up with original ideas. And that is how you should give time to frame your research question. We also should know that editors get hundreds of publications each day, and they are very busy. But you remember Surbhi from Elsevier yesterday told us that it's years of self-publishing, tremendous experience of great reviewers only makes them go into the next step of editor. So with so much of immense experience, they have sharp eyes to easily decode at least the badly written manuscripts. It is the editor's acceptance that they do read all the manuscripts, but mainly it's the cover letter, abstract, tables and figures, conclusions and references. They don't go into discussions and other things. By seeing through this also, they are able to make an initial impression or a decision to whether to move forward it or not. At this point, I would say that other important thing that the editors do at this time is they ensure that the guidelines basically are being, if you are submitting a RCT, consort has been given or not, if it is a meta-analysis, Prisma has been done or not. So they do check whether the guidelines have been covered. Then there was a lot of discussion just before this presentation about plagiarism. Plagiarism, redundant publication, and image manipulation. These are also some of the things that editor check it at the initial point, so that, and if any of these are positive, it becomes a major deterrent for further progress of that article in the journal. They usually are sent back. Now, plagiarism, we have been hearing this for years now. Plagiarism is something presenting someone else's work as your own without permission, without acknowledgement, or without giving credit. The editors have lots of softwares available to them. Crosscheck and iAuthenticate are the common ones. It gives them some percentages. It gives the result sheet with percentages. And different journals have different guidelines. But it is said that they have good journals, especially they have zero resistance to the plagiarism. They expect there should be a 0% plagiarism result. There should be no duplication or no similar thing copied from the other places. But still, some journals accept it to the percentage of 25 to 30. Some are stringent. They even say that 14 words, more than 14 words in a line, more than 5% from a single source, and in totality greater than 20% is a no-no to the good journals. Now, there was another topic also which was discussed, the redundant publications. What is redundant publications? Are basically the duplicate publications that is using the same intellectual content, that is using same photographs, same data set, for the same, being published by the same author or the same publisher more than once. This is known as redundant publication. An important thing to note out here is that even suppose I've done a study and I completed my study and I sent it for an international conference, it got accepted and it got published as an abstract. When it is published as abstract, even then it becomes the copyright. Being mine study itself, it becomes their copyright. Now, if I wish to publish that study, I need to take copyright from them to publish it to the or present it as a manuscript somewhere else. So this important is redundant. There are it is difficult to check at times. At this thing, especially the editors expect that the reviewers help them a lot, because reviewers are the persons who are usually well versed in that specific field. So they must have come across similar publications or by same authors. So they do check it at their end, but they expect reviewers also to guide them if they find it so. Third thing is image manipulation. Image manipulation is said to be one kind of fraud which happens by accident also, in the sense that authors tend to improvise their images. Photoshop is available to everyone, everybody can use it, and they tend to make it look better so that it attracts the editors and the reviewers. But there are rules to it. It says that whatever manipulations or changes you do, you have to do it to the whole image. You cannot do it any changes like enhancement of the contrast, brightness, color, cannot be done only to a part of image. It has to be done to a whole image. And in this situation, editors of big journals like Elsevier and JCBs, many of them have quoted that more than 25 to 30% of the times image manipulation is seen by even by good authors. But then what is the solution to it? You need to have your original image file also when asked. So ideally, you are not supposed to do any kind of tampering with the image, any enhancement, any highlighting to improvise it. But if you are doing, you should mention it in the legend. That is the thing that they require. Now, we are authors, and most of us are reviewers too, and some of the people in the panel are editors too. But all of us would agree that this is what authors think, that everybody is some sort of demon between them and their published manuscript. But we, being authors, reviewers, and some editors, we all would surely agree that this whole editorial process is meant to enhance the quality of research. Even the good journals, even when they are rejecting the articles, they do take efforts, and they do send the responses that can be used for improvisation of your manuscript, and that manuscript actually will be submitted somewhere else. So for some other journal is working hard. So we should acknowledge that fact, and having a trust. We were talking of how to remove the editor bias, the reviewer bias. The presence of trust in this system is important, and has to be maintained. Now, if you look at the peer review process, you see that the bulk of the center process is being catered by the editor, author to editor, and then to the reviewer, and then back to via editor to the author. So basically, the editor looks at your manuscript at 3 different time points. First is immediately when you submit, he decides and sends it for peer review or rejection. Second is when the reviewer give back their comments, then he helps you in a way that makes sure that the justice has been done by the reviewers for your paper. And third is when you resubmit your paper after revising upon the comments that have been given to you. So we'll be discussing at these 3 time points what editors look into your paper. And editors are also, it's not just one. The good journals which have full-time editors working for them, they have numerous editors, and there are section editors as well. Section editors means they have been working only for a specific section, and they have great expertise in it. They themselves have quite a bit of knowledge. Still, they send it to reviewers. So there are multiple checks even for the reviewers that we were discussing. Now, one thing is either you get acquainted with the editor, you find some link, which is not possible always, or the other thing is you learn to bridge this gap between the author and the editor-in-chief, the final publication. Now, what does an editor who looks into your paper sees? The first question that pops up in his mind is your paper right for my journal? And for that, most important is the focus area or the scope of journal. See, like this is an example out here. NEJM, a reputed journal, mentioned in its scopes clearly that they are interested only in original research which will either change the clinical practice or talks about some biology. Now, if I do a nicely conducted, well done, if I submit some well done RCT, and if I try to get it published for comparing 2 treatment strategies or 2 drugs which are both known with some modification, of course this journal will not accept it. So we ought to know what is the scope. Second, many a times your own references give a guide to the editor. Suppose you have submitted in a research journal, a pure research type of journal, and your references have lots of clinical articles. Then they see that there is a mismatch. Third thing that they check for the fit is, are the results general, or is your topic too narrowed, or is in greater interest of the wide reader spectrum that they have? If it is too narrow, then they usually refer it to a specialty journal, or they may reject. Like if it is something related, there could be something related to a disease which is localized to some specific area. So the other area, the journal which is based outside, which has major reader base outside, will not like to take it. So they basically, first thing that they see is it right for my journal? And When they find any kind of mismatch, the editors, they have lots of papers to review, they get annoyed because they feel that mine is such a prestigious journal and the author doesn't know anything about it. And besides not knowing, he or she has not even he has not taken efforts to read the aims and scope. So all editors expect us to read the aims and scope of that journal, especially if you are submitting into a new journal or it's not your regular one. Second thing that they, after the scope, that they give importance to is whether it's new. We discussed in the introduction, it has to be a new thing or an addition to the existing base. New need not be a topic always. It can be a new analysis method, new study design, or maybe at times new type of result, maybe a negative result contrary to the existing positive results of the same topic. So anything new ignites the interest of the editor. Then when he's done with the scope and he's okay with the novelty of the topic, then he grossly sees how have you written that paper. He expects it to be crisp and to the point. He does not want flashy, high English language. He basically wants a good grip over the grammar. By reading that article, if he is able to conclude that the author has justified what, why, and how, he proceeds further. He wants the manuscript to be coherent and smoothly transiting. It should not be like cut, copy, paste from different places, and there is no coherence between two paragraphs as well. So it has to be euphonic with simple language, which can be easily understood by its readers. The editor also wants or checks whether your presentation or manuscript shows humility, or are you humble or not. Suppose if you create a controversy over an existing topic, which is actually not, just to prove your point of view, is not anything sign of a humility. So he wants you to be humble in your writing. And for this general writing, most of the editors in their recommendations say that especially the beginners should read lot of good journal articles and understand their style, approach, clarity, simplicity. And before submitting, he recommends every time you should ask your friend to read it, or you should share it as a story. If you are able to simplify it as a story, then it can be understood even by the editor. Then we'll be talking of small other details that editors expect from each component of your manuscript. I must confess here that till now my all cover letters were standard. To the editor-in-chief, the journal's name. This is to say that I wish to submit my paper this to your esteemed journal. I would be grateful if the following is accepted. It used to be so bland. But when I was preparing for this presentation, most of the editors say that it is, good journal editors say that it is absolutely no and annoying to read such a cover letter. Ideally, the cover letter should be addressed in the name, like Stephen Peter, this journal, not even writing just the editor-in-chief. And contrary to this, editors have written that leave aside the editor's name, the name of the journal also is wrong when they receive the manuscripts. And why does this happen? So, because suppose I've got a rejection from one journal, I'm really frustrated, I'll put it immediately, try to submit it somewhere else because I want it to be published fast. And I don't bother to even change the cover letter. This is how they see that the journal name also remains the same. So these are some of the things which unnecessarily annoys the editor. You cannot change the substance or crux of your study, which has already been done. But creating another problems or rejection factors for you is not good. Then most of the editors have recommended that you are here to sell your manuscript. So you could say, or you could write why this journal and what is so special about your paper, or what is novelty, what is your future considerations or future changes expected out of it. You can mention that. And if you see, many of the journals these days ask to mention in their cover letter or the title page, they give clear instructions to give some disclosures or conflict of interest statements. But at least you should mention either in your cover letter or title page that this manuscript has not been submitted elsewhere, and it is not even in review process anywhere, and it bears the approval of all the co-authors. And then in editors also say that at this point of time you could also mention who do you want to be as reviewer and who don't you want to be as your reviewer. Many of the journals ask it separately when we submit our articles, but you could put it here also. But for this, what is a normal tendency? We put our friends, our colleagues, from where we expect good reviews, only as a reviewer. But the editor expects the reviewer to be somebody known in that field who has an expertise in that area. But to combat this situation, what they also checked was the reviewers that you are mentioning or advocating, and the author itself should not have co-authored any publication in last 5 years. So some of the journals even get stringent. Most of the times the editor prefers to look for their own reviewer base. The journal provides them with the support system, or they go through PubMed or Scopus. But few of the journals still ask for it. But don't do the mistake of sending the name of your friend or your colleague, because that gives a wrong impression. Then manuscript title and abstract. The title has to be catchy and interesting, but it should not be provocative. A sleep medicine medical school curriculum, time for us to wake up. This can be a title for a blog, but not for a scientific journal. So your title should include your keywords or should convey the main message, because it is the title. At times, it is not even the abstract. It is just the title that is visible to maximum people. So your title should incite an interest to go towards your article. And similar thing goes with the abstract. Abstract has to be comprehensive, that compels the reader to go towards go through your full paper. Then introduction has to be, it should not ideally be too lengthy. It should be set against a background of existing knowledge. What do you hypothesize? And what do you aim specifically to do with this manuscript or with this study? Then another important thing is methodology. Methodology actually tells you about the authenticity of your study. So the editors expect that you have explained the core methodology or the core methods that you have used specifically out here, and with detail and with reasons. And your methodology, as Sachin sir was saying, it should be reproducible. It should not be like it can be done only at some advanced centers, or you have used some sophisticated machine or some self-created experiment which cannot be reproduced. So your methodology has to be reproducible. Another important thing that editors have confessed or have commented at various places is, most of the times it is the underpowered studies or studies with inappropriate samples or unmatched samples or inappropriate controls basically that go for rejection due to the default in the methodology. So you need to be very clear and transparent with the methodology, and it should be a sound science. It should be easily comprehensible. Then comes to the results. In the results section, they expect that whatever methods you have told or whatever objectives you have described, you explain your results in the same logical manner, answering each question, and your tables or figures should be self-explanatory. As sir was saying, there is no need for a graph as well as a table. The graph, table and the text, they should not have a replication of the information. Otherwise, they become an extra material. and the editor will have to remove them because they have a space constraint. So your results have to be very clear and understandable and logical to understand. And significant, we all talk of p values and confidence interval. Significance should not be used very casually. It should be coupled with a p value. You cannot justify a p value greater than 0.05. It could be clinically significant, but then you cannot show a association or a causation with this. So you have to be very casual when you are using the word significant. Then coming to the discussion. Discussion, the editor expects that it should be broad, complete, but should not go haywire. It should not go tangential. It should revolve only around your hypothesis or the existing literature. But it should do mention the problem, strength, limitations of your own study. And if any other alternative or opposing hypothesis exists for your hypothesis, that should be mentioned. And in discussion or in summary, if you are not able to provide a summary of your findings, editors believe that it is a faulty study. You should be able to concise your project or manuscript nicely and enough, providing it as a gist. Then another thing that authors dislike, editors dislike is with a small sample size study, which has not been even done appropriately, if someone tries to prove a causation. Some author said it took 15 years from first study to actually conclude smoking causes lung cancer, but people with small sample sizes are try to prove that they have got a landmark solution or a landmark development they have got. So you should not try to portray that your study, if you are not sure, which usually is the case, if you are not sure, you should not maintain or portray the causality of your experiment. Then we had a discussion about references. References hold a lot of importance. They have to be right in number. They need not be excessive. Too old references don't have a meaning, and they have to be written in the format that the journal or the editor expects. And it should not be that only one side of the controversy or one side of the debate has been presented in your references. Merely looking at the references can tell whether there has been some bias in the presentation of the results. This is the most important and simple but mostly forgiven part of the authors forget about it and take it casually. This is reported by most of the editors that authors are not complying to the instruction to author section, despite of the fact that most of the submissions now make us tick that checkbox. Even then, we tick that checkbox without reading the instruction to the author section. And the editors claim that it is very common to see wrong formats of manuscripts, figures or tables, or missing conflict of interest statement or disclosures. And whenever an editor sees a wrong spelling or a typing error, it gives or projects are unprofessional behavior. Many a times they claim that even the Word file with track changes and comments on do get submitted. There, what impression do they make is, if you are not worried about details in submission, what is the guarantee that you took care of the details during your research? And if you have been compliant to the instructions of author, or if the author is happy with the way your manuscript has been formatted, presented, he becomes more tolerant to your other flaws. So this is something which is preventable. If he's not happy with the scientific content and the manuscript presentation, then of course, this is the result. You receive a lot of major comments on your article, and this has happened to most of us, and this is actually very frustrating. So this can be avoided if we take care of little things that editors expect from us, because it is rarely it is a single flaw that leads to a paper rejection. It is most of the times the little problems that combine, which are not, or which require a lot of efforts, that the editors plan to, or the reviewers plan to reject it. So before submitting of your final draft, make it a habit to read it loud, because reading it loud projects out all the grammatical, all the mistakes evident, make them evident so that you can correct it. Now, like instant dosas and instant idlis, there are instant rejections as well. The good thing about the editorial process is most of the time editors try that, even if at the first look they have made a decision that this article will not be, is unlikely that it will get accepted, even then they try to send it for review, though in the back of mind they do know that there is a crunch of reviewers, they don't want to overburden them, but still, to help the author improve their paper, they do send it for reviews. That is how we get our rejections with suggestions as well. But at times, if they find that there is no novelty and the manuscript is not at all appropriate, if the combination of it is more than 70-80%, then they straight away reject, and this is the instant rejection. And then is this list of rejected journals for your article. But at this point also, editors do help you. This is known as cascading peer review. Most of us would have seen that these days, when the good journals reject our article, they do send, or they do recommend some journals that where we could, our manuscript could be sent directly, and this could review shorten the second review process. So by this cascading peer review also, the editor helps the author and also helps the wastage of reviews. Then it is the second stage, when the editor receives the paper back from the reviewer. I will not cover this. This has been beautifully covered by Sachin sir. But what the editors check on behalf of, or for, in favor of the author at this stage is whether the reviewer has done justice during his work or not, whether it was purely a criticism or whether the approach was of positivity or hope or correction or of suggestion, as Sachin sir was talking of. Whether they want some, it is just an evaluation, or whether they have given comments that would help in the improvement or development. So they need to provide weaknesses and limitations with solutions. And on the basis of the definitive recommendation as confidential comments, the editors decides. Editors, there was a lot of discussion during the question hour session that what happens if two reviewers give contrasting reviews. Then in that case, see, the peer review is not something of a democratic election. It's not the counts that matter. The final decision is always in the hands of editor. He goes through the reviewer's comments deeply, and if he sees a substance in it, or if he's convinced enough, he goes in the favor of the recommendation by the review. But if he himself feels that there could be a bias, or if the justice has not been done adequately by the reviewer, then he goes in for a third review or the collaborative review, as Divya ma'am was talking about. So these are the ways the journal ensures that biases are minimized. But the third and the last point is what editors looks at when he gets back the manuscript from the author after he has done the correction. See, this is the last time that you can still sell your product. The editors make sure that the comments that you receive from reviewer are not too broad. They usually are very specific. So in the same way, we expect that the author should provide a detailed response letter with, it should not be general comments like comment accepted, discussion changed accordingly. These are not the comments to be placed in the response letter. you have to accept what the changes has been done and specify the line number and page number and what change has been done. You need to present it in a form which is easily understandable by which the editor can also understand, and he can forward the same to the reviewer, because whatever comments you are giving, he'll have to send it to the reviewer. If he has to work again on your response letter, this will surely annoy him, and a poor response letter will get you closer towards the rejection. There could be a situation that you are not happy with the comments that the reviewer has given, and you feel that if you comply to it, there'll be an absolute change for which you are not convinced about your manuscript. Then in that case, it should be a solid, scientifically based, polite rebuttal. You cannot be writing sentences that in my center I do like this, in last so many years in my hand it has been done like this. We have to provide a scientific evidence, but it has to be polite rebuttal. So coming to summary, this is the editor expects from the manuscript when it reaches to his table. He expects that it is focused, simple, concrete. There are no extra discussions, and it is relevant and scientific. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Ankita, for a lovely presentation.
Thank you.
Questions in the chat box which have come up. Dr. Gadipati Sridhar asks whether does a low acceptance rate have any role in popularity of a journal?
No.
Answer that or-
In contrast, the good journals always have a low acceptance rate. It actually adds to their popularity. If Divya ma'am may correct me if it is so, the good the journal, the lower would be the acceptance rate.
Because the acceptance basically, as you said, very well presented, Ankita, I must say. Very well done. Both Sachin and you, very well you covered your topics. So if, what I was saying, what was the question?
The question was, does low acceptance rate have any role in popularity of a journal?
Yes.
So if a journal has low popularity, is it low acceptance? Is it a popular journal, or is it done on purpose to increase the popularity of the journal?
No, it is not done on purpose. But what editor believes is whatever gives the journal a readability. So the reviewers' comments come, the methodology is fine, the article has got a message. The editor has to see the readability. Is anyone else going to read it? So whatever literature we are going to produce has to be read by people. So if it is interesting enough to be taken up by others, that will give it readability as well as citation. So as an editor, I would prefer to have articles in my journal which are having that readable potential as well as citation potential. That's way how I look at it.
And the good journals are more stringent with their process, maybe because they have good things, good bushes of rose to collect from, and the newer journals maybe have to, till the time they get so much accomplished.
So if I just share with you, I get 24 articles in a day. And of the 24 articles, I do a desk rejection of about 10. Of those 14 articles, and these desk rejection are usually case reports or in general topics which have they are the beginners who are writing it with no story title. So the title is not taking my attention. It's a regular routine thing which is being done. And then there is no, if I go and just flip the pages and see, there is no message, there is no story. So if I like this story, it's not possible for me to go and read all the 24 articles in a single day. So the titles and the abstract I go through, and if I like that, then I send it to the reviewers for their comments. And as I said, most of them are rejected straight away. And at present, the JOBCR has got a rejection rate of 80%. Only 20% are finally accepted.
So that's why we were a popular
That
journal.
is the reason I said there is no use getting acquainted with the editor. It may not help you always.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. There's another question which is very relevant. Dr. Pratik is asking that he has submitted a manuscript for review, and it's in review process for almost 2 years since submission. So, what can the author, what can you do as an author? I mean, what can he do as an author?
Sometimes it happens, like for JOBCR, what happened was earlier we were on editorial manager. Then the site was shifted from editorial manager to Evise, and that took a lot of time. So, in between, some of the articles were lost in the system somewhere. They are not visible on my screen. And then again from Evise, we have turned back to EM. So again, there is some loss of the articles. So if the author knows that there has been no comment or no screen is showing that the process is still going on for his paper, he should actually write to the journal manager or to the editor in chief that this is the article I have submitted, and this is there is no status update onto that. So that way we can look at this article number and find it where in the system it is, and we can start acting on it.
Yeah. Sachin sir, you would also agree that sometimes we tend to submit articles and for 2 years we don't hear. So ma'am has given a very good suggestion that we can probably write to the editor and remind them about our article. And
Well, we don't have to wait for 2 years. It sounds quite unpractical to me. We have delayed in our from our spec, but dealing for that long, so there could be some technical issue, and straight away right beyond 6 weeks, whatever the time is, straight away right to the editor, and the editor won't feel offended in any way. Rest assured, he'll just be thankful that you have reminded him of the pending work, and he may get ask the reviewers to do it again then.
In the
So
old
Dr.
era,
Pratik,
just comment, when we used to send postal articles, we used to send them to British Journal by post. Then there used to be that much of lag, so you have to write. But today it is everything on a click of a button. You can easily just send a reminder, and things can move fast.
yes, so Dr. Pratik, that answers your question. And the take-home message is that if you don't hear from the respective journal for about 6 weeks, please mail them or get in touch with them, and that will solve your problem.
I have my personal experience to share in this. It's better to write it to the editor that you wish to withdraw. He'll take at least some decision. And
You
at
don't,
times,
you don't need to be so rude. I must say, you don't need
no,
to
no,
be so rude.
this usually happens after multiple reminders you've already sent that
Yes.
there is no response. Then at least he takes some decision, and many a times because there's so much of lag, it goes in your favor. It happened to me, so I
No,
don't know.
it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that way.
It
Sometimes,
should not happen actually.
sometimes it may happen the adverse. Okay, you are after my life. So if there is no good content, I may not pursue the reviews. What happens? As soon as the article comes to me, I need to send it to the reviewers. Now the reviewers have got a time frame where they have to accept or decline. In the time frame, on the last day, the reviewer declines. So that 10 days has gone. Now I
The
have to
next.
send it to another reviewer. So there occurs a delay at every step. So sometimes it is inevitable. Sometimes the exam time, or sometimes all the reviewers are busy, or it's conference time. So you don't get reviewers in that particular time frame. So there are delays somewhere, but you have to be modest enough. And if you start writing to the editor uh, within a time frame and not be too pushy, the editor is going to be in your favor, would support you. But if you are very rude and like threatening, I don't want in your journal, then you are blacklisted actually. The next time the editor will say that there comes the role of the editor bias. So editor is watching. I know the first year we started the journal, I got some articles which had 100% plagiarism. And today also I know who are the authors. I remember. So it as an editor, we keep watching, we keep the progress of the authors. So that is how. And recently, as per the authors, the reviewing, everything, we keep on watching, and whosoever is performing better is invited to take up a higher position. And obviously, the team here has taken that has been given that privilege, and they have been the section editors now for the journal. So it's how things happen.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
I'll narrate a very awkward incident that occurred with me way back in 2010 when I was just beginning to publish my work. And we got a little ambitious, and we were actually doing something on osteoporosis and the concerns of a prosthodontist. And we sent the article to Bone. Bone, as all of you know, is a very reputed journal. And probably we were getting a little too boisterous and too bold. Yeah. And within a week, I received a message that our article had been accepted. So obviously, and I was just going through my mail pretty late at night, and I woke up and called my co-author, "Hey, get up, our article has been accepted." And the next day, I receive a note of rejection. So I lost my cool. I was a beginner. I said, "What the hell is going on? What kind of editorial board do you have that you first accept the article?" You see, what happened was that Roland Garros at the Harvard University was the editor-in-chief, and he had sent it to associate editor located somewhere in Melbourne or in Sydney, Australia. And the article got misplaced, and somebody else's acceptance came to me. And then I got into a bit of a melee with Roland Garros, and he said that if you're an author, you must have the sagacity to accept the decision of the editorial board. And this is just a mail mistake, and it's nothing more than that. There was no intention to hurt your sentiment. But it really hurts you if something like that happens. And I think being an editor or being on the editorial team is not really an enviable job, because you are not only doing this full time, you're working on your work also, on your job also. You're teaching, you're doing research, even if you're in practice. You have to take time out of this, shut your windows of your mind to everything else, and just concentrate on review, which may not be possible at all times. So what I'm saying is that authors and contributors must also remember that the editorial team and the editors and the reviewers are also human. So that aspect probably is lost, especially with the young and the beginning researchers and contributors. They're in a hurry to get a decision. Maybe it's not that easy for the reviewing team or the editor himself. Sometimes some aspects are a little complex, and maybe the article is, like I was doing work on sleep medicine, and there was this editor who had accepted several of our articles. And I presume that with the change in the editorial team, it would change the attitude or the decision of the editor. And once the editor-in-chief was changed, he wrote a very polite letter to me that your work on dental sleep medicine isn't really within the scope of this journal, which was pretty shocking, because with change of persons, the basic ethos of a journal doesn't change. But that is what has happened, and this is a very reputed journal in prosthodontics. And I was continuously publishing my work related to the prosthodontic aspect of dental sleep medicine. I knew my status very well, that to be accepted into the domain of dental sleep medicine, because it's primarily the domain of pedodontists and orthodontists, you had to have something novel, something which appeared to be purely prosthodontic. So despite that, he didn't relent. So these are situations that you have to go on with in your life, and I think it's just time which teaches you to be more sagacious, to be more accepting. And well, publishing is not the end of life. You might have been an excellent researcher, and your publication might have just been 1 or 2 or 3. The other thing that I feel very strongly as a senior person is that there shouldn't be any riders on the number of publications that you need to have a promotion or to prove yourself academically. This is not really done because you see a lot of us, like oral surgeons for that matter, most of you are oral surgeons. That's why I'm saying this to you. You spend maybe 3/4 of your day in the OT, and then you come out so tired. Where is the time to take out some serious-minded research and do it? And if you're doing it, it's very, very brave of you. Very, very. You know, I could say the endeavor needs to be appreciated. So it's not that easy for all of us to do genuine research and publishable research because everybody likes his own cake. हमने ये बनाया, this is very good. It has to taste good because I have made it. But the other person would tell you this is a bad cake, don't make it again because if I call it good, you're going to prepare it again. So that is how the situation is. So I think this urgency to get your work published stems from the fact that you're looking at your points. And that is something that will have to be probably recommended to higher authorities, that let research be more voluntary. People who are genuinely interested in research, people who do good novel work in surgery or physiology or something which they think is novel and will actually add. Ankita made that point very correctly when she said that, does it add to the existing knowledge? And I think she also talked about the New England Journal of Medicine, which states that very clearly. I think that is something very relevant. That is our work actually adding to the existing knowledge? And that is the soul searching that we need to learn over a period. Thank you very much for giving me time to address this. I'm not really. I happen to be one of the
Nice to hear from
listeners
you.
today.
Yeah, it has to be passion, not pressure to write. It has to be-
Exactly. And then you also discover your ability, whether you're really good at writing or not. You may be an excellent worker, you may be an excellent clinician, an excellent surgeon, but I mean, writing is not your forte. So why actually dump it on it? That is my idea.
Thank you.
Ma'am, there is a question by Dr. Devraj. He's asking that if he submits an article in editorial manager and it's rejected by one of the journals in editorial manager, does it get flagged as subpar article for all the journals?
No.
No. I hope you've got your answer, Dr. Devraj. Then Pravesh Mehra sir is asking how many authors can there be?
Any number. Any number.
And are there any roles for each of them?
If there are any roles, every author has to be a contributor to the article, either in the research or in the writing phase or in the planning phase.
So what Mehra sir wants to ask is,
He wants to, as a reviewer or editor, how do I find out? Okay.
The journal
They
asks
know
the
as a
journal asks the
reviewer or
role of all the authors. If it is a networkal collaborative study, multinational, there have to be hundreds of authors, and usually those names are also not listed in the main manuscript. So only 5-6 names are there, and the rest of the list is marked as asterisks, and then you can that has to be a supplementary. And otherwise, there are 30-40 authors, all of them included in the same manuscript. So depends how the journal takes those number of articles and what is the justification for the role of the authors. So there is usually no limit on the number of authors as far as they are justifiable.
thank you. Dr. Nandini wants to know that her own authored manuscript was sent to her for reviewing herself.
Usually it doesn't happen because when the editor is sending the articles for review, when the name is being selected, there is shown whether a possible author, a possible reviewer, suggested by reviewer, everything is highlighted there. So usually it should not happen. It may be a flaw.
So
Sometimes
if this
it can happen.
does happen, then obviously get in touch with the editor.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Ask for Dr. Pandit's comments. Is she?
Dr. said, it is a difficult job, but you see, we have evolved since last so many years. You see the quality of presentations, quality of publications which India content is having. Cool.
I'm sorry, sir, we can't hear you too well, sir.
Always find that this is biased. This is definitely a bit time when you become like
Can't hear you.
time. But I think now the quality issues, quality just really international.
I think your voice is breaking up. It's not audible.
Hello,
Yeah.
is it clear now?
Yes, better.
Yeah. What I mean to say is that we are improving day by day. Our quality research is adding to the international pool, and our editors, our journal the reviewers, they are doing yeoman job. They are doing good job. But there are little flaws, and that is our basic instincts. We come to know that maybe that is when you are a bit junior, and that time you tend to influence people that I can do this, I can do that. Features, but when you become little experienced, little responsible, then these things will automatically be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashi, I have got the poll results as well as yesterday's feedback. So if there are any more questions, fine. Otherwise, we can move on to that.
There are a few, ma'am.
Okay.
Dr. Pratik is following up with that question with which he said that his review process was stuck for two years.
What was he doing in that 2 years?
He mailed the editor, and every time he got the reply that it's in review process. So if that happens, then what do you do? Do you withdraw or do you continue?
If it is for 2 years, he should withdraw it.
Withdraw, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Another thing is whether we will obviously be posting the YouTube link of this session, so all those who have not been attending or could not attend, they can be. There's a question regarding that as well. There's a question from Dr. Neha Sharma. How do you flag a predatory journal? Is there any way of identifying a predatory journal, or how would you report it, or how would you recommend it, or not recommend it rather?
You have to know this from word of mouth. They ask you for financial gains. That makes you aware of some hint of towards taking you towards the predatory journal. So you have to see in the time process. You will come to know yourself who are the predatory journals and who are authentic ones.
Dr. Diksha wants to know whether there are any special criteria to consider for submission in an international journal.
There has to be a new message to be delivered. One thing. Other thing, there has to be a story. There has to be a flow in the story. So once and everything has
chain
to be
of
authentic.
events. The chain of events has to be linked to each other. It should be relevant in today's time and place. There was a question earlier by Dr. Gagandeep Lamba, who's a periodontist. So she wanted to know, like, if she wants to publish some guidelines as to protocol of management of a pediatric patient in COVID-19 times.
Yes, they are.
How does she go about it? Yeah, how does she go about it?
She has to write it as a short communication, not an original research, not a case report. It has to go as a letter to editor or as to go as a short communication.
Dr. Sridhar is asking, is there any criteria for review time for manuscripts of case reports, case series, review and research, or is it solely the editor's decision?
No, usually all the journals have marked a review process time. So it is about, if I talk about JOBCR, it is about 10 days for the acceptance or decline, and then there are, I think, 3 weeks or 4 weeks for the comments. I think 14 days.
4 weeks.
4 weeks?
4 weeks.
4 weeks. It was 4 weeks initially, but then we shortened the period because we wanted faster So I think it is now 14 days. The latest one I think is 14 days for making your decision for the reviewers. So once it is from
we
the
have-
reviewer, again it comes back to editor. Within 3-4 days, the editor usually takes a decision. So that makes the. I think on the last day, I have asked the Elsevier people to give a presentation on how the journal is doing, how much time it is taking. So that day we'll come to know how much actual time taken is in the process from submission to acceptance.
Last two questions for the day. Dr. Nandini wants to know how are reviewers selected by the editor? And second part of the question is, Sachin sir said that the reviewer can approach journal site and enroll.
There are some journals who have these their sites where the reviewers can get enrolled. Like for Elsevier, if you are interested, I think there are some sites where you can register yourself as a reviewer. And regarding JOBCR, it's usually usually when we are searching. So there are two ways of finding a reviewer. Either somebody has asked us through a mail that this is my CV and we want to become. Then I go through the reviewers online article publication. So that suggests that this is the area where the person is expert in, and we can take some reviews and finally see how everything is going. This is one way. Other way is getting registered through the system, and the third way is that Elsevier. If you are a reviewer for any of the Elsevier journal, you will be in my database as well. So from there, initially when we started the journal, we used to pick up journals, pick up reviewers from the known people I knew, and I used to register them and ask them for this favor. But then with the number increasing so much, that number was not sufficient. I took reviewers. So now what I do is I check for the classification match of the article, and with classification match, I take up the Elsevier's entire database. And from there, I select my reviewers. So you have to be on the system. Either you know the editor, you can convince the editor that you want to become a reviewer, or you write to the editor. If you do not know him or her, you can write to the editor. Or third system is you can be a reviewer for any of the system. Enter yourself in the database.
A lot of the juniors who have logged in have texted in and messaged, and they want to know that they are fresh pass outs or probably postgraduates or senior residents. Can they be reviewers at that stage of their career, or
Yes.
should they wait to become more
If
senior?
if they are the subject expert, yes, they can be the reviewers.
Dr. Arun Kumar wants to know, was there any regional or geographic bias for article acceptance? Because, for example, few international journals reject the manuscript within hours after submitting the manuscript.
Yes, the international scenario is such that the Indian articles are not easily accepted, but you have to prove your track record. If you have छप्पर फाड़ के ना, एक बार मिल गया तो छप्पर फाड़ के मिलेगा, नहीं मिला तो you first entry you have to prove yourself. So you have to prove yourself, you can do it. If your article is good, your reputation is made. So once you have a good article in your kitty, and you send another one, and there are chances that it would be accepted too. But yes, there is a bias towards Indian authors, towards Indian studies, and more so for Chinese, because the authentic part is a question mark. People feel that more of fraud is happening in India or in Asia, so that is a factor which rejects our papers.
In the end, it will be the authenticity and the quality of your manuscript which will ensure that it gets published. To carry on from what I was continuing with, Dr. Nandini wants to know that it is seen that sometimes a junior reviewer is reviewing an article which is actually a good manuscript, and because the reviewer is not very well experienced, such a good manuscript may get rejected.
Yeah, so it's not. It never happens that the article is sent to review to both the junior reviewers. So it's guided. So if a junior is being sent for review, a senior person is also sent for review as well. So the editor has to make that selection.
Thank you, ma'am. I think we're done with our questions. There are no more questions in the chat box. If anyone does have, you can please type in. In the meanwhile, ma'am, you can share your
Screen. I'll do that. So Ankita, this is the poll result. Can you see?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So you can take over. I'll just move these slides.
Okay.
Yeah.
The major flaws reported by a reviewer include the all except the right answer was ambiguous statements, because as Sachin sir had said that insufficient evidence, lack of ethical clearances and similar work published by the same author, they fall into the major flaw category. So the right answer was the ambiguous, which has been marked by 30%.
Okay. Next one.
Reviewers' comments should be submitted preferably at least after, most of them 50% have marked it right. Sir had specified it clearly. It is after minimum is the second read.
Okay.
Redundant publications refers to all except
Sachin, what was
use
your...
of part of same intellectual content. As I had said in my presentation, the whole of the, if you are using just a part of the database, that you can use without a copyright. But otherwise, if you are using the full database, you are not allowed to. So the right answer is the use of part of same intellectual content. Rest of the three falls in the redundant publication category. Same publication by same author, similar publication by same author, by same publisher, or if it is accepted as an abstract, it is considered in redundant.
Fourth one.
Is it essential to get a copyright for your own published material when you use in your future manuscript? Yes, most of them have marked it right. Which among the following is untrue regarding plagiarism? The right answer is first, the representation of another author's language, thoughts, ideas, or expressions without citation. The next is image manipulation. Only to meet the publication requirements, you can do an image manipulation. Otherwise, for rest of the three reasons, you are not permitted to. What do you think is important to become a reviewer? Sachin sir, your lecture was so nicely understood by all. They have marked it nice. D is the answer. All of the above. Which of the following is more important for a journal editor? Suitability, novelty, manuscript presentation according to guidelines, well-conducted trial. I think the right answer is first, suitability. Unless and until, even if an topic is novel but does not lie in the focus of the or the scope of journal, they usually don't take it.
Sorry. So now I'll move on to the feedback. Sorry. Yesterday's presentations and display. So how do you rate the sessions in terms of content? Mostly it was 8, 9, 10. So I think you have given suggestions also what do you expected and how to achieve those. The other question was how do you rate the delivery of sessions? They too fall in 7, 8, 9, 10. So there is chance of improvement though. So we'll take care of that. How do you rate the relevance of sessions? That too were fine, I suppose. So basically they were 9 and 10. So That is the feedback we received for yesterday's, and again today we'll share the form so that we can have today's feedback. So, anything else?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
there's one question from Dr. Richa. I missed it in the middle, but this was discussed yesterday as well. I will just repeat it again. Is there any way to get feedback for the submitted peer review from the editor of the journal so that peer review qualities can be improved, or the quality of the peer review can be improved? We had discussed this yesterday, but if you can just elaborate on it.
On how to improve the peer review quality.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll be talking about it in next 2 days. So I think we'll take up this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was discussed yesterday as well, so it'll just be a
It will.
repetition.
The messages
It'll keep
over the
coming.
days. It will be continued.
Right. Nehra sir, would you like to ask something? I think there's something in the chat box. Sir message once again, so I think probably right. I think that's it. We're done with the questions for today, and thank you very much to all the participants. We've crossed 100 participants today, ma'am. So we had a good, much better than yesterday. And thank you very much for your patient hearing and active participation. And we look forward to you tomorrow at 4 p.m. For the day 3 of this reviewers workshop. And I think it was very interesting to know from an editor's point of view. Like we have on the panel Dr. Sachin, Dr. Ankit, and Dr. Divya, who are active editors of reputed publications. So to get to know their point of view as to when they see a research paper or when they see a manuscript, so that what goes inside the editor's mind is what was the key of today's, or to summarize today. So I think the reviewers who participated today would have got key insights. So thank you very much for your kind inputs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Right. So if there's no more questions, I think we can log off.
Yeah. Is there anything to copy paste from the chat box? Please see. Otherwise, I could finish it off. You need just go through the chat box once again. If any question is remaining, we can take it over tomorrow. It's a long chat box.
Yes, ma'am. I think we're done. We can.
Okay.
We can sign. Thank you very much. Dr. Shanmugas Karpagavali, last 2 questions were not discussed.
I did the recording. I don't know it's recorded or not.
Then she's poll. Last 2 questions were not discussed. She's saying.
They are descriptive questions. That's why maybe whatever is left we'll discuss tomorrow.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Not ending. Not ending. You may leave the meeting. Yeah. I think system about hang or something. It's not ending.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll call you back.
Thank you.